Every once in a while, someone manages to put together a military firearm that's just massively popular. The Remington rolling block was for single-shot rifles, the Mauser 98 was for bolt actions, the PK was for belt-fed universal machine guns, and the ZB26 is that gun for the magazine-fed light machine gun. Thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the James Julia Auction House taking a look at some of the guns they're going to be selling in their upcoming fall of 2017 firearms auction. And I'm really excited today to get a chance to actually take a look at a ZB26. This really is the granddaddy of magazine-fed light machine guns. After World War I, this is the kind of gun that everyone was looking for about 20 years. And the Czechs just really knocked it out of the park with this one. So the story of this thing dates originally back to 1921 when the Czechoslovakian government or military started looking for a light machine gun. And they did a bunch of trials. They tried out pretty much everything that was available on the market, the BAR, the Hotchkiss 1914, the Darn machine gun, the Berthier machine gun, basically everything that was around. And including a couple of domestic Czech production or Czech developed guns, including one developed by a pair of brothers, Emmanuel and Vaclav Holek of Czechoslovakia. And what those guys came up with was actually initially a belt-fed gun. They ditched the belt feed, they went to a magazine feed, and the Czechs decided to go ahead and adopt it. And that was the I-23, made by a little factory called Praha, P-R-A-H-A. It's probably pronounced some other way. A little bit of back and forth ensued. The factory wasn't really big enough to supply the Czech military with guns, and so eventually this ended up being produced by the ZB factory. And at that point, it became commercially known as the ZB26. In the Czech military, it was the LH Vizor VZOR-26, the light machine gun model of 1926. Now, between 1926 and 1939, the ZB factory would manage to sell no less than, or at least, 120,000 of these guns to no fewer than 24 different countries. If you didn't make your own light machine gun, this was the one to get. This would additionally be extremely influential to Colonel Nambu, designing the Type 96 and 99 Nambu light machine guns. They're heavily based on this. It was directly responsible for the Bren gun. The ZB factory entered an updated version of this, the ZGB33, in British machine gun trials, and it ended up winning and becoming the Bren gun. And the reason that it was so successful is it just did a great job of blending all the requirements for a military light machine gun. It had an excellent magazine that was reliable and durable. The gun itself was reliable, durable. It was not overly expensive to manufacture. It wasn't a cheap gun. You know, this isn't stamped sheet metal, but it wasn't so expensive that small countries couldn't afford to buy them. It is super quick and easy to take apart. It's a very simple gun in operation. It's accurate, it's controllable in full auto, it is fireable in both semi and fully automatic. It was chambered primarily for the 8mm Mauser cartridge, but it was offered in a couple other cartridges, 7mm Mauser and, boy, a couple others that don't come to mind offhand. At any rate, 24 different countries really can't all be wrong. So this particular one is an interesting example in that it actually has a Spanish military crest on it, but it was manufactured or completed during the German occupation of Czechoslovakia and used by the German military, or rather German, not paramilitaries. The Wehrmacht never formally adopted the ZB26 because they had their own guns. Basically, the MG34 took its place. However, groups like the Waffen-SS and a lot of police and security organizations in Germany at the time, organizations that didn't have access to the Wehrmacht's own direct stream of armaments. A lot of those guys use guns like the ZB26. So let me show you that crest is pretty cool, and I'll show you the other markings and how this all comes apart. All right, so markings. We have this really cool, intricate eagle crest here. That is a Spanish military crest. And remember that ZB was making these guns commercially for all sorts of different customers. So the serial number here, 0534, is going to be the serial number for a specific contract. This is number 534 for that Spanish order not number 534 overall. To go along with that, on the right side of the receiver is the designation. Since this is a commercial gun, it is marked ZB26, and the serial number is repeated. However, on the left side of the receiver is marked Waffenwerke Brünn, AG. This was the German name for the Brno, the ZB factory, and this name was adopted when the Germans occupied Czechoslovakia. So what we have here is a receiver that was in progress. They had put the crest and the serial number on it, but they hadn't actually finished the guns off to be sent out to the Spanish. And when the Germans showed up, they decided that these were pretty cool guns, and well, they'd just as soon keep them themselves. So guns like this that were in progress were completed, and then they were actually sent to Heinrich Krieghoff, or they were overseen by Heinrich Krieghoff, for final assembly and proofing. And you can see evidence of that here on the very back end of the receiver with a Waffenamp and an eagle crest. We can also see that on some of the small parts like the bolt in there. We have an eagle crest and then an HK stamp, and that HK is Heinrich Krieghoff. The controls for the ZB26 are really quite straightforward. We have a 20-round standard magazine that is top-fed, so that allows you to get a little bit lower in prone, and it's also easier to change, especially for an assistant gunner to change for you when you're shooting. Magazine catches at the back. That's just a nose-in and rock-back magazine. And by the way, this is an excellent magazine design. These are strong and reliable and really good. There is a fire selector above the trigger with options for 20, which is full auto, 0, which is safe, and 1, which is semi-auto. This gun does fire from an open bolt, pretty typical of light machine guns. We have a magazine well cover that slides into place there. It's actually missing its little detent. It should be held in place there, but you can close off that. You also have a quick change barrel. This is, of course, very similar to the Bren because the Bren was developed from this. So there's a little button on the back here, and I just lift that lever up, and the barrel slides right out. This barrel, by the way, is another really good example of the occupation, the redirected occupation production of these guns by the Germans. So we have a Z in a circle, which is a ZB factory mark, but then we have a Waffenamp and a German Eagle firing proof. This barrel was originally serial number 33660-42. That has been crossed off because the Germans decided to allocate it to gun 534, which is the gun we're looking at here. And it is barrel number 1. If you had a spare barrel, it would be marked 2. Field stripping is very simple. There are 2 pins here and here that hold the lower assembly and the buttstock on. And kind of like an AR-15, you can remove one and just swing this out of the way, or you can remove both and take it off entirely. I am going to just remove this pin, push it through. It is a captive pin, and once it's out, the lower assembly pivots down. This is the guide rod for the recoil spring, which is located here in the buttstock. With this out of the way, I can pull out the operating rod, gas piston, bolt carrier, and bolt. The gas piston on this thing is really long because the gas port is located all the way out at the muzzle end. One of the things that would be changed when the Bren was developed from this is they would move the gas port back to about the midway point of the barrel and have a much shorter gas piston as part of it. Anyway, this is our bolt carrier, and this is the bolt, and this is going to sit like so. This is the unlocked position. All the way back here is the locked position. When it is locked, this surface right here lifts up against a locking shoulder in the back of the receiver, and that's what locks the action when it fires. Again, exactly like a Bren gun. So when this is cycling, this is the unlocked position. It will go forward. It's going to catch, these two tabs here are going to catch a cartridge from the magazine and strip it down. This will eventually, the bolt will stop because the cartridge will be fully chambered, and this surface here will hit the barrel face and stop. The bolt carrier beneath it is going to continue moving, which forces the bolt to cam upwards like this. Once it cams up, it then comes into contact with this surface right here. that is going to hit the firing pin right back here, which is spring-loaded and protrudes when it gets hit. So it's an open bolt firing gun, and that's what causes it to fire. So it's like this, unlocked, locked, and then under spring tension right there, fires, and then it extracts, unlocks, then extracts, and then ejects the cartridge and continues the cycle. It does eject downward, which is why there's this opening in the op rod. Empty cases are going to go down through that and out the bottom of the gun. There's the whole thing disassembled. And like I said, really very simple to take apart, and that was part of what made it such a popular gun. Because the magazine is located right in the center on the top of the gun, the sights have to be offset to the left, and we have a rear notch sight here, and it is connected to this big drum for changing your elevation. Note that there's a little window here with a range in hundreds of meters, and that goes from 200 all the way out to 1500, and just raises this rear sight notch as it goes. The front sight is a hooded barleycorn to match, also offset to the left, the same amount, so the sights are parallel to the barrel, just about an inch off to the left. One other neat thing to point out here is this carry handle, which does a couple of things. You can pivot it up like that to carry the gun just at your side. This, of course, works as a handle for removing and replacing hot barrels. And then you can fold it down to get it out of the way, and you can actually pull it back like this and rotate it down, and it will lock under this lug. That, by the way, is the lug for anti-aircraft sights to be mounted on. And in this position, it locks down, and it acts as basically a sort of horizontal front grip that allows you to hold the thing and basically in an assault fire sort of stance to fire from the hip while moving. These are fantastic guns, and they just really don't get the press or the attention because, well, they're not made by one of the really big countries. So if you'd like to add this one to your own collection and have a really sweet shooter yourself, take a look at the description text below. You'll find a link there to the Julia catalog page on this gun, and you can look at their pictures and their description. And if you're interested, place a bid here live at the auction or over the phone or through the web. Thanks for watching.